This video, we're gonna focus on what I just call hip angling. Basically the idea that you wanna have your hip facing the direction your opponent's passing because it controls your frames and how easy it is to bring your foot in.
So very often we might be defending our guard, and if our opponent starts to walk this way, it starts to become a little bit harder for me to frame. I have to use more mobility in my leg to try to move, right? If my hip is facing him though, my legs naturally track the direction he's passing towards, and my arms are ready to frame. This is something that's really small. A lot of people do subconsciously. So if my opponent starts walking this way, I just kind of track and go this way. But if you don't know about this, either A, you can be here, and as he walks, you kind of stay center and it gets really difficult, or even worse is maybe he starts to turn you a little bit. So as he walks this way, he pushes your hips and you turn the wrong way. Now, once I'm turned the wrong way, it's much harder to bring my foot in. My arms are kind of like facing the wrong direction, so everything kind of becomes difficult and starts falling apart. And this is something that if you don't know about it, it can happen to you, and it kind of feels like you're falling in quicksand because you just start getting out of position and he starts kind of coming in and finishing a pass. So what often happens is if I'm facing the same way as him, when he moves just a little bit this way, it's very easy for me to use my feet, my hands, and quickly realign to keep him in front of me. But as I start getting turned the wrong way, it becomes very difficult to do those things. So a huge aspect of guard retention is either preemptively not letting them get on the wrong side, or what we're gonna focus a lot in this video, which is the idea of how to realign to get our hips to reface him. Now, the tricky part is that a lot of people, to try to keep the guy in front of me, what you would naturally want to do is as he walks this way, is to just kind of turn and face him. And that's okay in the beginning, but what happens sometimes when you get faced the wrong way like this is that I can't just turn, because if there's any amount of pressure here, just like put your hand here, just anything like that, I can't just rotate back in. So you kind of get stuck. And that's where this idea of what I call a hip hop is really important. So one way to deal with this could be you could put your foot on the floor, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But the problem with putting your foot on the floor here is that anytime I'm opening my legs up, my hips are opening a bit, and that opens up elbow-knee space. It makes it easier for his leg to come in here and start threatening a pass. By keeping my legs tight, my whole core is tight, so even if I mess up, I still have this elbow-knee protection. But now we have to find a way to realign our hip while we're like this. So what I do here is I put my elbow on the floor, and I'm gonna kind of kick my leg out because I want to create some kind of escaping force away from his pressure, and I realign my hip like this. You see, and what I've done is I've adjusted my hip from going this way to slightly back the other way. And that allows me to start getting my legs in place. So if I'm here like this and I feel a little in trouble, just that realignment now allows my feet, my hands, and everything to start coming back in play to realign, right? Again, from another angle, I'm here like this, I'm in a bad way, and I quick and do that hop. It's important to mention here too, a lot of people when they first learn this, they kind of want to like over dramatize it and go high in the air. And the problem is when you go high up in the air, you can start getting stacked, and it's not as fast, it's a bit slower. So what I want to do is I want to like kind of kick this guy out and up a bit, and again, I keep my legs tight, and I want my hip to barely come off the floor, just enough as needed until I can do that quick realignment. Now notice I'm ready here, framed, to start coming back in and defend. So just really focusing on the movement pattern itself here. One big concept is I'm using my elbow on the floor to help me create counter force. That's a very big concept. If my arm is in the air, it's hard to get pressure back this way. So your elbow on the floor creates turning pressure, right? And we're gonna use that to help with the hip hop. So again, I keep my legs tight. This elbow here, I kind of turn my arm backwards so that when I turn back, I'm ready to frame, right? It would be like here, and when I turn back, this is ready to frame. I don't want to have this open because he can enter this space, or even if my hand is this way, when I turn back, I'm going to get crushed. So I want to be like that. So now I'm here like this, I have the elbow on the floor, right? And I'm going to kick my leg up. And if you watch my hip here, I do that really quick, right? I don't want to go super high. It's just like I'm trying to shift my hip out and quickly alternate under, and now my legs can realign. So as I said before, there's different tools you can use here, but another powerful tool when you get in these kind of situations is if he goes towards the back side a little bit here and he's not too far along, you can try to use your bottom hook like this. This way I can pull myself back in. The thing with this is, I think it's important that you understand the other one first because it's more foundational, but this is a really useful tool sometimes because sometimes you're just fighting and you don't want to have to do the huge hip hop. And when I go here, I immediately pull him in, and now it can be easy to start switching in and going for different attacks. So now we're going to talk about when your opponent's in a little bit closer. So in this case, I still have my elbow knee connected, so he can't fully lock side control. For him to ever fully get side control, he's gotta get inside that space, right? So here we're protected, but still I'm not in a great way. It's not easy to get back because I'm the wrong way. Here also, the hip hop won't quite work because he's just in a little too much. So this is where putting your foot on the floor and doing what I call the forward shrimp matters a lot. Again, ideally, I don't want to have to do this. This is in when they're in much deeper. So again, I want the elbow on the floor. I'm going to keep my knees really tight and I reach out with this bottom leg. From here, again, all I'm really trying to do is get a really quick realignment of my hip like this so that my knee can come in. Of course, here, we'll talk about it later, he could try to go to north-south. But what I'm going to do is once I've realigned, now I can start coming back in and see how my knee is already coming into him. So as he keeps leaning into me here, now I can actually start framing and fighting and stuff. And this kind of slowly turns into pin escapes. So it depends on how deep into the pin they are. Understand when someone's passing the guard, there's a combination, or there's a transition point from passing the open guard and being fully in a pin. So if I'm here and he just got around my legs and he's starting to come in, here I do this really early before he's fully in, and now I've realigned. That's where this is really powerful. You can use it fully from pin escapes as well. I've done a full video on escaping side control where I talk about it a little more in depth there, but it's a big concept to understand. So now I can realign from here. So one more time. We're here, he's leaning in a little bit. You can grab my back and be a little tighter. Right, like he's like this, right? So here, I forward shrimp like that, and now I'm gonna start framing, trying to work out and move. So in a second, we're gonna start talking about what to do when they try to transition to north-south, which is a huge part of this. But I wanted to mention more of a niche way of recomposing from here as well that's really important to understand and to add into your arsenal. But it's a bit more niche, so I focus on it secondary. And that's the idea of sitting up to recompose. The problem here is if I sit up here, I'm gonna turn away and probably give up my back, best case being a turtle. But sometimes you can do things like, say for example, if he tries to switch this arm over my head here, like this, I can start pushing this and sitting up away like this. And now, because I have that arm, he can't take my back in the same way. This is a very powerful tool for retention you can use, but I don't like my students to rely on it too much early because it's a bit more niche. And I think understanding core hip realignment principles is more important. Another way this can happen is if someone has my pants and they're doing a Toreando pass and they pass to that side, often people will sit up here holding the sleeve like this. And again, it's hard for him to go for my back from here. And now I can scoot out to set up a realignment, right? Again, coming back down into the side control version here like this, you know, I'm here like this, his arm goes over my head and I push, set out, scoot out here. Another version you could do is if he has a double underhooks, go to both knees. Right? If he's got double underhooks here and he's coming around the guard, I push, sit out, and realign. Marcelo Garcia used to use this style of retention all the time. Again, I think it's good to have multiple tools in your arsenal for retention. Another interesting idea with this concept I've seen Marcelo use before as well is the idea of like, even when I'm turned away like this, trying to do things like hook in on this leg here and push this out. And you see, if you can ever get the foot snaked in, you can start using this to try to retain and get out. So now we're gonna loosely talk about the last component of this, which is your opponent transitioning into a north-south, right? So very often when I'm here and I start trying to realign my hip like this, they're gonna switch up and try to go over my head. And we're gonna end up in this position here, which at some point I'll do a full video on as well. But what I wanna do is I wanna get my forearms locked into the armpit here. If I push with my hands, he can collapse me down because like I've shown in side control escape videos, your arm is weak from here to here. But when I have this angle and his weight is loaded here, this will not bend, right? So I'm trying to lock my arms into the armpit. So now as he drops all of his weight on, you can put your hands on my back, right? As he drops all of his weight on, I can kind of move and swivel like this. And it's very hard for him to, no matter how much he leans his weight in, I can kind of keep him up. From here, I have to focus on getting one knee in. The biggest mistake people make is they try to bring both knees in. But if I bring both knees in, I can't retain because I have to get one foot in between us to get fully back. So I'm gonna pick a side, and whichever one I pick, I slide to that side. From here, now as he leans his weight in, I can push with my knee and make space for my foot to come in. Depending on your mobility level and how much weight they put on you, sometimes I grab my back and lean in, yeah. Sometimes I can just push up and feed a foot directly. But once the foot is in, you're gonna come all the way out. And this is a really important concept to understand. The basic idea is I'm always trying to keep my hip aligned with him. Somehow I get knocked the wrong way. I have the other tools I showed, but now he starts coming into a north-south scramble, right, like this. And I start framing here. He starts leaning in, driving in, try to get really heavy. You see, once my knee is in, he can't get rid of it without backing up. I start making space, feed the foot in. If I have less mobility, I can spin back around, feed my foot, and retain guard.